Hello, once again, everyone, and welcome to your Wednesday night webinar. My name is Patrick McGrath. I'm the Chief Clinical Officer for NOCD. NOCD is an online platform for the treatment of OCD and related conditions. If you're looking for help for obsessive compulsive disorder or body-focused repetitive behaviors, or things like tics or hoarding, or the co-occurring things that come along with that, like anxiety and mood issues or trauma, well, go to nocd.com. Right there, right on the hat, actually.
And here.
And there we go. Sporting the swag tonight. There we go. Yeah, excellent.
Always.
Excellent. All right. Well, Mackenzie, welcome back. Tell everyone who you are and what you do.
Hey, I host support groups for NOCD, and I also went to therapy through NOCD as well. That's me.
Awesome. And we'd love to have you come on once in a while, help us out with the lived experience aspect of things. So
I love to.
Yeah, let's get into some questions. A4210 says, I've harm OCD, been worried about something. You woke up to drink water and tried to go back to sleep, but you just kept opening your eyes over and over. And all of a sudden you got strong urges and everything seemed foggy. You felt out of control with an urge to actually get off the bed and do harm. Is this something OCD would do? Am I safe to move on? What can I do? Well, we know typically, and you could tell us from some lived experience there, is this something OCD could do?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think OCD, nothing is off limits for OCD. It just does not respect any boundaries whatsoever. Would you agree with that, Dr. McGrath?
I would say that if you can think it, OCD can grab it, right?
Yes.
If you can have an urge about it, OCD can grab it. If you have an image about it, OCD can grab onto it. So there is just no limit other than your own imagination in terms of where OCD might tell you, what if this means that, and what if this would occur, and maybe you should do this thing, and this compulsion's the only way to get through it, and all of those kinds of things. How many years of your life were trying to solve things with compulsions, Mackenzie?
Oh gosh. I'm 32 now. I struggled with OCD for 28 years until I got to ERP therapy. So, yeah.
And did any of the OCD stuff come true in 28 years?
No. And if it did, I always use your video about the ceiling falling. I'm like, if it did, it would be a really shitty roof and a really shitty coincidence.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. How many of your compulsions do you think actually helped you?
None. I think one of the things that I say a lot of the time is the sad reality is that my compulsions caused more harm than what my OCD was trying to convince me was going to happen anyway. I mean, washing my hands to be safe, then I'd end up with infections because my hands would crack and bleed and I would continue to wash them, or, turning around while I'm driving. I'm already a bad driver in general. And, I'm not focused and I'm turning around and I'm, maneuvering to get back. And I think the compulsions always do more harm in fueling OCD, but also in reality too.
So what you're telling us, if I to be very clear here, OCD was not helpful to your life, is what you're saying.
No, it wasn't. It was awful.
So I'm going to ask the question. I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here.
Okay.
If it wasn't helping you, why did you hold on to it for so long?
I think that I was so scared, and I realized that my core fear is death. And I think I had this like aha moment of I was so afraid of dying that I wasn't living. And that was like my biggest aha moment. I mean, the scariest thing you can do is the opposite of what OCD is telling you have to do. But I would do it all over again because the past 3 years of my life have been absolutely amazing. And OCD is still there, but it doesn't keep me from functioning and thriving.
As I like to say, you can live the rest of your life sitting next to your tombstone, wondering when you will be 6 feet under it. Or you could arrive to your tombstone on the day of your death and say, well, that was fun.
Yes, I love that. And so I have to tell you, I quoted you saying that the other day, And then I was like, because someone said, oh, well, nobody that doesn't have OCD can ever understand, how hard it is. And I was like, oh, have you met Dr. McGrath? And there's this whole article that I shared with my group on NOCD's library about how it's one of your biggest compliments is when people think you have OCD because you understand it that much that you do. And I love that.
Yeah. When people say, wow, you think like you have OCD, I think, well, thank you. I appreciate that, because I have made a massive attempt in my life to be able to get to that point so that I could see what those thought patterns are. But what I think one of the most awesome things about doing that has been is I've learned something about OCD, and that is it is amazingly predictable.
Yeah.
We know the playbook of OCD already, right? And OCD, if it's anything, is a rule follower, and it therefore follows the playbook.
Yep.
Right. So when people, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so when people say to me, well, but then it switched to this, what if that's not OCD? I'm like, oh, sounds like the playbook of OCD to now get you to doubt that.
I like to think when I'm doing compulsions, I don't know why, it reminds me of like Winnie the Pooh, like the old school Winnie the Pooh of him just kind of fumbling around in circles. And he's trying to follow like an upside down map. And I'm like, I'm always end up in the same place every single time. And it doesn't matter how many times I do it, I will always end up there unless I lean in and do the exposure.
Yeah, sounds good. And I love hearing the family in the background there. I mean, that's a sign of, no, I actually like it because, like you said, your life was so difficult until years ago. I'm going to bet that your OCD interfered even with your relationship with your husband, with your children, all of those things, right?
Yes. Well, so first of all, he's failing at daddy daycare right now. But second, yeah, my marriage really, really struggled. I will die on the hill that OCD is a family disorder. And my kids suffered. My husband suffered. Anyone down to the cashier at the grocery store suffered from my OCD, But yeah, I think that's the coolest part. One of the coolest parts about recovery is being able to be present as a mom and a spouse and just, I can't change the past, but I have control over my future. And so being present and not letting OCD take anything else is a huge motivator for me, for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome.
And apparently, and I wish I had some background noise control over here.
I like it. Joseph asked, what's the cost of therapy? A lot of that depends on if you're self-pay or if you have insurance, what your deductible is, what your copay is. And that's probably something important to really talk about, especially at the beginning of the year. A lot of people will show up to therapy anywhere or to a doctor's appointment for medical, physical, mental health, whatever. And they'll say, well, why do I have to pay you something? I have insurance. But there are things like deductibles where you have to first pay a set amount of money before the insurance kicks in. And then there's co-insurance where you have to pay a certain amount of money and the insurance pays the rest. And so all of these things come into play. Might there be some insurances out there that are 100%? There's no deductible and then there's no co-insurance. There could be. I think they're few and far between, but there may be still a few of those plans that are out there. But the vast majority are going to be, you're going to have to pay a certain amount of money until you hit a certain level, and then you'll have to pay a certain percentage or maybe a set fee per whatever the service is. And then there's potential for cash pay, and that will also depend on who you go to see and what state you live in. It could be more expensive or less expensive in certain places. And one nice thing is if you want to check that out, go to nocd.com. We will discuss all of our fees with you right there in one of our chats.
Yeah, and I'll also say too, mine wasn't covered by insurance, but sometimes you just have to invest in yourself too. And oh my gosh, there has never been, I wish that, NOCD does, I did a payment plan through NOCD and that was always really good as well.
Yeah, Awesome. Hello from Japan. I'm thinking about getting a motorcycle license, but I still have intrusive thoughts and fear of harm OCD. Do you think I should go for a license in this condition in terms of exposure and response prevention therapy? Well, here's what I will say. I hope that you get to a point where OCD isn't the decision maker of what you want to do or not do in your life. That's what I would hope for anybody. Um, I I can't tell you to go get a motorcycle license or not get a motorcycle license. That will be a personal decision that you will make on your part. But my hope will be is that you work with someone to help you make that decision without the influence of OCD telling you if you should or should not do it in any situation like that.
Yeah, and I think that's another really cool part about going through exposure response therapy is being able to like feel confident in decisions that you make yourself and not feeling like you need everyone else's, opinion or reassurance. It's super cool to be confident and comfortable enough in your own mind to say, I'm doing it, whatever it is, a license for a motorcycle or buying a new car.
There you go. Clinton says, my mom may or may not be a hoarder in denial. I live with her. I'm not allowed to get rid of my own stuff. A friend came over recently and commented on how bad things are here. Any advice? Well, Quentin, I would say, first of all, who owns the home, right? Because if you are the owner of the home and your mom lives with you, you are allowed to get rid of your things if you want to get rid of your things or not. Now, if it's your mom's home, your mom could be allowed to establish certain types of rules for the way the house is run. That being said, my concern would be, is the home functioning as a home, or is it turning more into a storage facility where there's just more and more things all over the place? And because there's things all over the place, it gets hard to walk around or move, or there's a lot of trip and fall hazards potentially in this situation. And what I wouldn't want to have happen is a friend of yours be concerned and maybe call social services on you or your mom and have them come to the home and see what it looks like and then want to do a level of intervention on their own. You really don't want the state or the city or the county involved in these things if you can avoid it. You would much rather work with a therapist and an organizer who can help you to go through the things in the home and work on them in a way that feels much more collaborative, shall we say, than what the city or the county typically do, which is they come in with a bunch of people and a dump truck and they start taking things. So, Quentin, what I would do is I would try to work as much as I could with your mom. And there we go. Oh, I think I heard your microphone moving there. Because,
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Just keep it still and it'll be fine. As long as Quentin, you, that's perfect. As long as Quentin, you, here's what I wouldn't do. I wouldn't just go start throwing everything out, because for people who have hoarding, when that happens, it typically makes things even worse instead of better. So I would try to be sure that you don't just go and do that. I would definitely get somebody else involved in the situation.
I have a question off that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Ask you. Mm-hmm. So, caveat to that, switch it around, because this is a question I get a lot in groups, is when people are living in, say, your parents' household, and it's this kind of struggle between, OCD not respecting boundaries. So like having, if I have contamination OCD and I've made all these piles all over the house and I'm trying to tell my parents how they can and can't do laundry or how they can and can't navigate through their own home, like that, I feel like is so hard because it's OCD causing chaos in the household. What would be your advice on that?
Well, OCD to me is kind of like visitors and in-laws. And fish. They're good for 3 days, and then they should get the heck out of your house, right? Afterwards. I joke, but part of it comes down to priorities, right? What is the most important thing to you? I like to take some things out of ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy here, and figure out what are your values, right? Is the value to live in a home that is as a home functions, or is your value to live amongst all of your stuff, keeping everybody else out of your home in a way and living in fear of what if some of these things aren't going to be there in the future? And you have to kind of make some decisions around what do you feel is the most important way for you to live your life. And hoarding would say the most important thing is to have all of these things around, right? What if I need it someday? What if somebody wants something? It's mine. I spent money on it. I spent time and effort getting it. I should just have it. Versus all of this stuff is actually very, very interfering in my life. We know that people with hoarding have significant interference in their life. They miss a lot of work or school or functions because of the hoarding. They have trouble navigating. There's a lot of slip and falls or injuries. If there's a fire, it's a very devastating fire. And even firefighters really don't like hoarding homes. There was a study, I believe it was in Australia, that showed that 1% of homes that have fires are belong to people with hoarding in Australia, but it counted for over a quarter of the death and injury of firefighters in just those 1% of homes. So it is a very significant problem, and a problem to a point that we probably don't truly know how many people have hoarding. We think we've just scratched the surface on the number of people who have hoarding in the world.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. This might be interesting for you, Mackenzie.
Okay.
How can we help a family member going through harm OCD, seeing them ruminating and us trying to not to give much reassurance, what to do when seeing them in situations like that?
So I always say that, I think it's counterintuitive, especially as a parent, which I've shared with you before, but my oldest just got diagnosed with OCD not too long ago. And you can learn to be empathetic without giving reassurance. And it's hard because we want to make our loved ones feel better. And I think it's that perspective switch of like, not giving the reassurance is what makes our loved ones feel better. And I think when I'm really struggling, or I was really struggling, when my husband would kind of come up and say, "Hey, I can see that your wheels are spinning," because I would have that checked out look, physically present, but mentally long gone. And I just want you to know I'm here if you need me, but you've got this, or, lean into your tools, or remember what we talked about with your therapist last week, because he would come to sessions. So I think trying to be empathetic and supportive in other ways, other than feeding the monster, and realizing that when you don't give the reassurance, you are helping so very much.
Yeah. And that is hard advice, though, right? To
Yes.
not offer the help to somebody who's begging for it, and maybe even telling you things that, Mackenzie, you probably said to people like, "I promise this is the last time," or "just one more. That's all I need is just one more." I'm going to bet those were common phrases that you would have used in your life.
Oh yeah, my go-to is, "I swear this isn't my OCD, but."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I ever had to start a sentence like that, it was,
It was totally OCD then.
Walks like a duck, quacks like a duck. Yeah. Probably duck.
Quackity quack quack quack. Yeah. So Sophie, I think, here's what's motivating Sophie. And let me take it outside, Sophie, of OCD for a moment. And imagine your family member was on a detox unit and they were detoxing off of alcohol. And Sophie, you went to visit them. And when you saw them, they were sweating, they were throwing up, they had chills and a fever. They looked just terrible. They did not look like themselves. Disheveled, pale, whatever you can use to describe how sick you might have seen someone that you love. And imagine them coming up to you, Sophie, and saying, "Could you please just go down the street to the liquor store and just sneak some vodka in here for me? I beg you. I cannot take this anymore." This is the worst I have ever felt in my life. I just need this to stop. I promise this will be the last time that I ever drink, but I can't take it. I just need you to get me some vodka, please. Sophie, would you go and get them vodka? That is my question to you.
Like, that was good. It's a good, I mean, I think it shows people how debilitating OCD is and can be.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, it has I quit NOCD the first time I worked for NOCD 5 years ago because my OCD wanted me to. I've gotten rid of cars. We've moved houses. I mean, the amount of chaos from feeding into it, from my loved ones feeding into it. And it's not that they were doing anything wrong. It was, at the time, nobody knew any better. But I mean, it is so debilitating.
Yeah. And sometimes people will say, yeah, but alcohol it's just so dangerous. But Mackenzie, let's go to what you just said.
Yeah.
How many hundreds of thousands of dollars have you wasted in your life all to satisfy OCD? If you've maybe lost money on cars or homes or been upside down on things because that seemed at the moment like the best thing to do, right?
Yeah, and this is one of I think it makes me sick to my stomach to this day. Although I've had to, accept it and move forward. The amount of financial strain that OCD put on my family, it's gut wrenching. And we were talking about, hoarding, and there were times where I would spend $200 on groceries and they would go to start bagging it. And I would realize they had a little cut. And I knew I was going to throw all of that stuff away because it didn't feel safe to donate and it didn't feel safe to give to my family. The financial it's awful. It was one of the biggest, I get
Tough, right?
get emotional.
I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah.
you for being vulnerable with that. But I think it's so important for everybody to see that, though, right? That, you might think, oh, it's just an order of groceries here, or it's just that. But those all add up, don't they?
Oh, yeah. I mean, and you think about, cars, houses. I mean, there is no boundary for OCD unless you set it. And I remember my husband coming into a therapy session and my therapist was like, just so everyone is aware, we are not moving. We are like, Montana, my husband, do you hear me? Mackenzie, do you hear me? And I needed that because the amount of, I always say, like, my husband is a Marine. He was always very physically fit, annoyingly, obnoxiously upbeat. Love him, but he was. And I watched the life drain from him. He fell into a horrible depression, gained a lot of weight. OCD it has no limit. So
yeah, OCD does not care about you or your best interests or your friends or your family. It cares about itself.
100%.
And then when you and tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to bet I'm not in this situation. When you were struggling financially, OCD says to you, well, if you had just done the thing I said and done it right, it would have been okay. Did OCD ever once say, Mackenzie, I'm sorry about that one. My bad?
No. Yeah, no, never. And also it never came in and was like, oh, well, here's a problem solved for all the money that you lost. So I always say, like, if we're sick and OCD is louder, or we're stressed and OCD is louder, it doesn't come in and say, I'm sorry. If we're sick, it doesn't come in and say, oh, I'm so sorry. I'll give you some space. Let me know when you feel better and then I'll come back. No, it comes loud. And it just, yeah.
That says, I wonder if therapy would be different for people who don't have OCD. If they have the same types of fears, are they treated differently? Or is the same advice, expose yourself to the things that scare you and move on from them? That is always my advice to people if there's something that is frightening to them. If you have a phobia of an elevator, we're going to get on elevators, right? We're going to slowly and gradually go up higher and higher in the building. Those are the things we're going to do. I have gone to pet stores with people and we've held tarantulas. I have held snakes with people. I have ridden elevators. I have had people take a gondola up. In fact, there's a TV show. The first TV show I did was called Anxious, and JR. If sometimes JR's watching. Hi, JR. Nothing for no secret to that one because we were on TV together. So, but JR and I, you could see us riding this gondola up to the top of a mountain, and he had seen that as we were going to die. Right, there was just no way we were going to die, and he got up there and he was like, "No, that wasn't so bad." Right, and that was the beauty of it. In fact, I'll have to have JR in here sometime in the future. That would be really fun to get him in. But that is the way, Beth. You have to do the things you're afraid of. Mackenzie, you have little children. They're going to ride a bicycle, I'm assuming, at some point, right?
Yes.
If they fall and say, "Mom, I'm never doing that again. That was terrible," will you say, "Okay"?
No, but also I'm horrible at riding a bike. I'm not the person to ask. But yes, no, I would tell them to get back up and get on it.
But Mom, it hurt. It was uncomfortable. It was bad. Shouldn't I never do it again?
No, got to keep going. You got to keep going. And then you realize, I mean, I think that everything feels so scary. And then, once you do it, once you realize that you're capable of doing those hard things, the amount of empowerment that you feel. I say this, I don't know if I've talked to you about this, Dr. McGrath, but like no one sat me down and they were like, when you go into exposure response therapy, you're going to learn to be confident. You're going to learn to be self-aware. And those are the two biggest takeaways that I had from it. I mean, I don't think I had an ounce of confidence in my body before because OCD had just sucked it out of me. I don't even know if it was there to begin with. But when you realize that you're capable of, leaning in and doing hard things, like it is such an empowering feeling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. What role does ERP, especially response prevention, play in acceptance? Well, that kind of goes right to what you were saying there. So when you finally were doing response prevention, Mackenzie, and you had to accept the fact that, you know what, these things in my head could come true. What was that like for you? And what was the aha moment or the eye-opening experience that you had for that?
So I think there's two things to it. I think first, one of the hardest parts of therapy for me was the better I got, the more clear just how much chaos OCD had caused in my life was. And I remember telling my therapist, I was like, I don't want to do this because I'm realizing how much was affected and, how much time I lost and how painful it is to look at all of those things. And I think that was really, for me, becoming self-aware of that and accepting that were really powerful for me. Then I've shown that video of you talking about the ceiling falling so many times in groups, but it is this, you have all of these aha moments in life. And it's, just because something bad happens doesn't mean OCD was right. It's life. These things are going to happen. And one time I had this woman say to me, my worst case scenario was cancer, and she had gotten cancer. And she was like, do you think my OCD went away? She's like, no, it found something scarier than cancer.
There you go.
Like, it's just, I think, realizing that it's always going to be something else.
Yeah. I have that card in my wallet that says, I hope my parents die tonight. It's going to be right one day.
Right? Oh, the chain emails. Remember, it was like send these to.
Those were great. Yeah. Those were.
It was send these to 10 people, or or you'll die. I was sending it to 12 just to be sure.
I bet just the baker's dozen, effect going on there. Yeah. I bet. God, I forgot about those. Those were
the bane of my existence as a kid.
Yes. Yeah, and then they'd always put the story,
some horrible, tragic event.
Jim from Nebraska didn't open it and was killed 3 days later in a combine accident while husking corn or something like that. Yeah, it was just...
To put it simply, there is no more Jim from Nebraska.
Jim is now in about 8 million pieces spread across the field. And yeah, it's right. They were terrible, and they just played on people's fears, right? But hey, they just need one person to go, yeah, well, what if? Why not?
I know. And my response to that now is I'm a huge Giants fan. Like, if I could just do enough compulsions for the Giants to go to the Super Bowl, and it worked, clearly that would be something I would have done already. Doesn't work.
Did the Eagles win this year because there were more compulsions done for the Eagles, or more prayers for the Eagles, or maybe the Eagles were better in the game than whatever?
Somebody
Who did
just
they play? I don't even know. Who they played. But
they played Taylor Swift's boyfriend.
Okay,
the Chiefs.
I do not watch football, so I go shopping when football's on. I'm like, great, no one's at the grocery store. This is awesome. No one is bothering me. It's great. I love it.
I love that.
Yeah. So all my friends are like, you going grocery shopping today? I'm like, you betcha.
No one else is going to be there.
No one else will be there. Absolutely wonderful. I can take my time, move around. That'll be awesome. Oh, that's good. So going back to Carolina's question, part of it is just acceptance. And, Mackenzie, I love what you said earlier about me. I mean, I accept every single thought that pops into my head. And I have to. And I've treated so many people with OCD that I can't do anything without intrusive or unwanted thoughts popping in my head. I mean, I say this all the time, but Mackenzie, next time we see each other in person, I'll think about throwing you down the stairs. Just so.
That's in that video too. I love
yeah. So it will happen. I will think about it, and I don't think I will do it, but I promise you I will think about it. Just
I think also when you realize too that the thought isn't the problem, our reaction is, that was also a really empowering moment for me too. Everybody has intrusive thoughts or images or urges. The problem is our reaction to them, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I haven't figured out how to stop a thought yet, but I can.
Yeah, if you do, I have to go over a giant bridge every day, and I'm like, oh, what if I just... So yeah, if you figure it out, just let me know.
And why haven't you, as of yet, when you've gone over that bridge?
I don't know. I think it's such a cool thing to be able to just sit with that. It would have caused me so much.
I'm going to challenge you. I want you to change your phrasing. Live with that.
Okay, got it.
Sometimes people take the word sit a little literally, and they're like, I have to sit with it until it goes away. No, you're going to live with it for the rest of your life. And you're going to learn that you can handle anything that pops into your head.
Yeah, I feel like it just has to come along with me, whatever I'm doing.
It's just along for the ride. Yeah, exactly.
Over the bridge that I didn't swerve off. Just
there
keeps coming with me.
But tomorrow you could.
I could.
We may film at 11. Mackenzie dives into bridge with car.
No CD.
Yeah, no CD on trial. What's the difference between trying not to ruminate, stopping a compulsion, and pushing away an OCD thought, or giving in to OCD? Well, I'm going to add a third thing to this. Let me pop this in here too. Let me add a third thing here into what we really want to do. So the moment you try not to ruminate, you're going to ruminate, right? And pushing away a thought, I don't know anybody who's been able to do that as of yet successfully. If you have been, please reach out to me. I'd love to learn how you do it. I think there's actually a third option, because neither of those are really helpful. The third option goes back to the previous question, which is, how do I just accept the things that pop in my head and live my life? So, Mackenzie, you have things in your head all the time that are probably very still OCD themed, and yet you're now living successfully in terms of not having OCD be in the driver's seat. How did you do that? What changed?
Yeah, I think, so an example that I always give, I try really hard to stay present because OCD rarely wants us there. So one of OCD's favorite things for me is when we're at the beach, like, oh no, but my daughter, my oldest, has a talent for swallowing so much water. Like it's exposure city. She just always has her mouth open. And my OCD loves to think about brain eating amoebas. And so I'm like,
those are fun.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. So when my brain, when my brain starts, okay, like I have got to explain to this child to keep her mouth shut. What am I going to do? And I'm like, okay, where am I? I'm at the beach. My kids are playing. They're saying, hey, mom, watch this, to a trick that I've seen 50 million times, but I'm going to watch it. And so I think pulling myself back to the present is something that I really do, and allowing that thought to just be there. And I think it's about letting your values be louder than what you fear. And I value being present. The other thing I would say is I always try to lean into discomfort wherever I feel it. I mean, and I say, like, except for like if I'm standing in a deserted alley and there's like a shadow of like Michael Myers on the other side, clearly I'm not going to give in to that discomfort.
Yeah, but run.
That's right. But like if I'm, I always take a left, but Siri tells me if I take a right, I'll save 10 minutes. The only reason I would take a left would be because my OCD feels like that's safe, and that's the way that I know, and that's the way that's less triggering. And so I'm always going to take the right. I really try to lean into that discomfort.
That's fantastic. Right.
Not always successful, but
yeah. So we want to recognize ruminate, right? We want to recognize trying to push thoughts away, and we just want to allow for, okay, well, there it is. Did you ever ruminate enough? Did you ever think enough about something to solve a problem? Ever?
Never. No.
Not once? Not in 28 years of this? You never did?
Never. I always use those machines you can get in now, and it'll tell you if you have like any, like a blood disorder, anything. It's just like does like a clean bill of health thing.
No, but sounds fascinating. And sounds like a OCD nightmare in some ways too for someone to go through. Yeah.
But I always say if I got in that machine and they were like, oh yeah, everything's good, my brain wouldn't go, oh, problem solved, never thinking about that again. It'd go, oh shit, that machine probably has a ton of radiation and I didn't have anything, but now I do.
Yeah. I've often said for people with scrupulosity, their higher power could show up in our session and say, don't worry, it's all good. And you would go, are you sure?
Yeah.
Right.
How do you know?
Yeah. But really? Are you really? You're not just saying that, are you?
Do you have a badge? Do you have something that tells you that you're the one that knows everything?
What's proof? Yeah. Kelly says, I've been hearing a lot about ICBT and ERP together. What are my opinions on ICBT? I don't have enough training in ICBT, so it's hard to tell you exactly what I would say about it. So I'd have to get back to you on that and be able to answer that with more education. Insane Coconut says, I'm diagnosed with paranoid personality disorder, social anxiety, and OCD. I want to know if these disorders can co-occur. And also I use CBT and medications before. CBT helped a bit, but I'm still suffering and can't live normally to get a job or whatever. I think everyone is trying to harm me deliberately, and perfectionism, OCD, and germ OCD is tormenting me at the same time. Please help. So, I mean, you can have multiple diagnoses. Let's just start off there. That is a possibility. So, it never hurts to get a second opinion from someone if you're doubting what it is, but I wouldn't go past the second opinion, right? For OCD. OCD would like the 78th opinion just to see what this doctor says, right? So maybe not necessarily going down that route. I'm concerned where you say you can't live normally. I think that you can get there. But I notice also you say CBT, but I don't see a history of exposure and response prevention therapy, which if you have social anxiety and OCD, I would really want you to work on. But with the paranoid personality disorder, what I would want to assess first is how much is that interfering or getting in the way of your life, because it could be difficult doing some exposures on the social anxiety side if you were also paranoid that people were out to get you or something of that nature. So I think that it probably either takes a very skilled person who has a specialty in both personality or paranoia issues and anxiety, or finding two therapists, one who really knows the anxiety side, one who's really good with the personality disorder issues or the paranoia, and then those two coordinating with each other in the best way to help you get what you need. That would be my thought in that situation. Marie says checking feelings makes it seem like it feels worse. Did you ever find that, Mackenzie? The more you check things, did it get better or did it get worse?
It got worse because I think it's just another compulsion. But I think the cool thing about exposure response therapy is realizing like I can handle being depressed. I can handle being sad. I can handle being angry. Like just if and when those things happen, we handle them when we get there.
Does relationship OCD make you feel disconnected in your relationship? It could, right? I mean, it's a possibility. I'm not going to give you a yes or no answer on that, but it's a possibility. So.
Yeah, I also think people forget relationship OCD shows up with friendships too.
Ooh, tell us more. Did that happen to you?
Oh my gosh.
Well, all right. I'm sitting back. Go ahead. The floor is yours.
No, there's nothing worse than, first of all, the red feature on text messages was meant to torment people with relationship OCD, I think. Like, oh, you read it, but you didn't respond to me.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, always feeling like someone's mad or going over a conversation. Did I offend someone? I mean, yeah, it really, really wreaked havoc on my friendships for sure.
Any of them now that you've had to like talk to those friends and explain things to them about, how you feel now about things? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it was really cool to kind of go in. I never really know how to say this because I don't choose to have OCD and I know that but I do feel like part of those fallouts was not my fault, but I don't know, help me. I take responsibility for the chaos that I caused. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like my relationship with my brother really struggled. My relationship with my friendships really struggled. And once I started to become open about OCD and talk about it, and explain, hey, this is what I was going through. I'm sorry. That really helped. And it's really cool because I think it helps break the stigma down around, mental health too. Because if people are willing to listen, then it's really exciting to share. But I think a lot of my college friends, like there were a lot of my sorority sisters who reached out to me after I started to be open about OCD and were like, oh my gosh, this explains so much. And I feel like it just allows people to see you in a different way, and realize things more.
So
Are you coming up with a hard question for me?
I was debating a couple of things, but some people might say this to you, right? I'm just gonna give you the hard question.
Yeah.
How'd you get through it? You're in a sorority. How do you have OCD and have all this chaos going on in your life, but you can function and do something like that?
Oh, I didn't. I think that was yeah. I ended up leaving school because I was always late to class because I would get dressed and then I would feel contaminated and I would do it again and I would miss classes and then I couldn't turn assignments in because I was afraid I plagiarized. It was pure chaos. I look back, I don't know how I even held on to the functioning that I was doing. And I really wouldn't call it functioning. I don't even know what, it was bad. So the answer is I did not do any of those things well at all. None. Keeping friendships, I think the only time that I really I really I didn't do much of that well at all. I tried. And I think I wanted so much to be a people person because I am, but I wouldn't get out of my own way. And I didn't have the resources. And I think that's, the coolest part now is having friends and enjoying that time with friends and, being present and doing those things and working for NOCD and all of those things that I wasn't able to do before. Or I was able. I didn't.
You were and I'm glad you said that, because that is something that a lot of people bring up over time is I hear daily about the things I can't do, and I always correct people, and I talk about the things that you won't do because of fear, right? But if you can't do it, there's nothing that I can do to help you for it. I used to have a blog on a certain magazine, and someone just got so mad at me one time about that article that I wrote about can't versus won't. And I just remember saying to you, I will never believe that somebody can't do something because of fear. Otherwise, there's no treatment that anybody could give them.
Yep. Yeah, I think like you can have all the resources in the world, all the support in the world, but until I pushed myself over that threshold, I didn't see any progress, because until I was willing to commit to doing those hard things, nothing was going to change. And I can't, I can't drive a mile down the road. I can't, like, it is a perspective switch. It is realizing, like, it's not that I can, it's that I won't. And I feel like sometimes I get a little bit of crap for that too, but it's part of it, right? I mean, we have the ability to do it. We don't want to.
Yeah. All right, let's see. Richard says, hey, Doc, a few days ago, I accidentally closed a small safe. I feel panic trying to get it open, but I did have the code. I've been in panic for the last 3 days, even though I'm not doing compulsions. I'm very afraid because it's not going away, even though I'm actively engaged in exercise and work. Okay. Well, Richard, my favorite exercise for panic is interoceptive exposures, doing things like diaphragmatic breathing, running in place, hyperventilating. Those are the things that if you were working with me, that I would set up for you to do. I think you're probably caught in a what if here, like, oh my gosh, what if I had closed it, but I didn't have the combination and I couldn't have opened it, and well, then you would have called the locksmith and then they would have come over. And well, what if one wouldn't have been available or anything like that? I mean, and I say that, Mackenzie, because I want to get your answer on this. I'm going to bet everybody gave you a logical answer and then you just followed it up with a yeah, but what if to the next thing. Did you even listen to the logical answers you were given, or were you thinking about the next yeah, but what if scenario that could come about?
Yeah, no, I didn't. And it's never a right answer for OCD, or it's right and it helps for like a minute and then 10 new things pop up. So yeah, no, never got the right answer. Never. Yeah. Remember, you could sing the Bear Hunt song again.
Going on a bear hunt. I ain't scared. I got my gun by my side and my bullets too. Coming to a river. Can't go under it. Can't go over it. Gotta swim through it. Yeah. I could do it, but I'm not gonna. I won't do the rest.
I had to get you to sing it again.
No problem. Mm-hmm. If you're having a relapse and you've done ERP and have had good stretches, but this relapse seems longer and the usual tactics aren't working well, what's your advice? More intense ERP? Anything else? It's anxiety, OCD about anxiety. So I'm going to bet you've had that, Mackenzie, right? There are times where OCD rears its ugly head and it's hard to decide what to do in that situation. What do you do?
Yeah, I think, okay, well, would you agree that there's a difference between a setback and a relapse? Because I think that that's a really important thing.
Tell us about that. How do you define the difference between the two? I'd be interested to hear.
Oh, no, I'm scared now. I think so. One, I don't think we can ever go back to square one, because I can't unlearn the tools I've learned in ERP therapy. I can't.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Check, winning.
Check.
Okay. So that's a big
seal of approval. There you go. Yeah.
Hey, I will wear that badge proudly. So yeah, I don't think you can ever go back to square one. I don't think that's a thing. I think that, I didn't have those tools before, and I can't forget those things unless I get amnesia. But I think that's important. The other thing is a relapse. So I can honestly say I don't think I have ever relapsed, because I lived in 28 years of pure dumpster fire chaos. And then I found ERP therapy. But I have setbacks all the time. I have bad days, you know, and I function through them. And so I think the caveat is like, okay, well, what would that have looked like 3 years ago? Or, you know, seeing how far you've come, right? I mean, I ran over a bat the other day. It was on the ground, and I can tell you, like, I was like, ew, that's gross. But in the past, my brain would have been like, my whole car has rabies. I can't put groceries in the car because they're going to have rabies. And I need to go to a car wash, but then the rabies is going to get all over the car, not just on the tire. I mean, you think about it like that, right? And so, like, it's there, but it doesn't keep me from functioning, even when my OCD shows up like this. That's what I'm trying to say.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Does it?
Yeah.
And I just think a setback, like, it's part of managing a mental health disorder. There's not a cure. So we are going to have days where we have our OCD is a little bit louder and we have to lean in a little harder. And I think that's where being kind to ourselves and self-compassion comes in, and just
OCD was never kind to you.
never, ever, ever. Also, if I had $1 for everything that was going to kill me,
oh gosh,
like, at Taylor Swift too, I would have so much more money.
Yeah, you would be. Boy, there's an endless amount of things that could destroy you. I mean, I could just pick like 25 things in the background of you right now that could probably just kill you. The light behind you explodes and shards of glass go flying through the air and hit your spinal cord or something like that. Yeah.
But this goes back to why it's all this one video. But I love this video of you, and everyone that's in my group will say, I show it multiple times. But it's the idea of that inherent risk. Like, I walk across a crosswalk, I'm risking that someone runs through it. I eat grapes without cutting them, I might choke. Like, OCD comes in and it says you can accept it everywhere, but not here.
Yeah.
I like that video. Can you tell?
I do.
I can basically quote the whole thing at this point.
I'm sitting here thinking about, is there a redeeming quality in OCD? And I can't think of one. Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think with OCD specifically. I will say that everyone that I have met in the mental health, world, I think when we've dealt with a mental health disorder or mental illness, like, I think that a lot of times people are more empathetic. We see things differently. But nothing positive as far as OCD is concerned. No.
There's always the interesting debate where I'd like your take on it. Mm-hmm. I've heard some people say, this has made me better. Here's my take. I don't think OCD makes people better. I think what has made people better is their own grit and determination to get through something. And OCD is probably one of the hardest things in the world you ever get through. And taking that and knowing they were able to get through that can give them the confidence to face so many other things in their life. So I don't want to give OCD the credit. I want to give the person the credit for having pulled themselves up by their bootstraps, done the work, and learned from that they are strong. They are powerful.
Yeah, I think that, something that I think that a lot of times people say, I just want to be the person I was before my OCD got so loud. Mm-hmm. And I always say, I don't want to be that person, because I think my OCD was always loud, and I have grown so much and learned so much about myself. I mean, do I obviously wish I didn't have to do those things? Yes. But I think the person I am now that I've, fought through exposure response therapy, I love her so much more than the person I was before that. And I think that's a really cool thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you have a family. You probably have a better relationship with your husband now than when OCD was rearing its head. And there's probably, tell me if I'm wrong, but there's probably a grieving period where you're so excited maybe that OCD isn't in the driver's seat anymore. But how did you also deal with looking back and thinking, why did I give so much time to this stupid condition? And how did you forgive yourself and move on from that and give yourself the grace to say, I can't stay stuck in the past. I gotta keep my eyes forward.
Yeah, I think one, he's driving me nuts because he's so loud right now. I'm hoping that did my headphones help at all, or has that been loud?
Oh, we still hear. It's okay.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna.
It's an ERP for you, just to
geez. So it's a love-hate right now. I'm just kidding. No, I think this is one of the most painful things for me is realizing how much it took. And I realized that continuing to go back and look at that was not helping me. It was only hurting me.
There you go. Yeah.
But I do think that I allowed myself like a mourning for it. Like I accepted it, but I also it is sad. It was sad. It is, it does suck. I can't change it, but I can acknowledge that it was very unfortunate. But yeah, I think that's the hardest part is realizing how much time it's taken. Not only from me, but from him too. So yeah, I think it's a really, really hard thing, but I accepting that I can't change the past and all I have control over is the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. And that's what we would hope for everybody, right? I mean, OCD is probably always trying to pull you back in, I'm going to bet, right?
Oh, yeah. Yep. And I tell people all the time, I used to, there was a time where I would physically chase him around the house to ask him if he washed his hands. Grown man. No. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. It's just, it'll try to pull you back in. There's so many, he'll come in from doing something and I'm like, oh, I should ask if he washed that. Nope, not going to do it. But yeah, I think, just dealing with it as it comes for sure.
Well, that's awesome. Well, I always like to give our guests a little couple of minutes at the end to talk about, what you're doing and what you want to leave everyone with before we get out of here.
Currently, I'm contemplating divorce since my husband doesn't know how to be quiet. No, I always, want people to know that there is so much hope, and that's what I will always, I think I'm in such a good place, but I used to be in such a bad place too. And I shared this in group earlier today. So there was this very humbling event that happened where my daughter asked me if I was popular in high school, to which I said no, because I didn't go into details, but I was afraid of swallowing my own saliva. So I was spitting in my shirt and I lost so much weight because I was too afraid to eat with my hands because they were contaminated. And so I have been in these dark, dark places.
Could see you making that not the popular kid in school, if that's the case. Yeah.
Okay. No. So, I've been there and I have felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. And I just always want people to know that there is so much hope and you don't just have to, survive. You can thrive and you can do all of the things that you want to do. And I go in group. Whenever I host group, I'm triggered. My OCD is loud, right? What if I walk across the screen butt naked, even though I'm fully clothed? What if I say something to offend someone? And, I just allow myself to sit with that and do what I value and make people feel less alone and more understood.
Yeah.
All I can do.
Well, thank you for sharing and being open tonight. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
And thank all of you for joining us once again. If you're looking for help for OCD or related conditions, go to NOCD.com. That's NOCD.com. And we do work with OCD, body-focused repetitive behaviors, hoarding, tics, and we even do one of my favorite things, our NOCD 411 sessions. If you're interested in finding out information about OCD or related conditions, you can sign up for one of those too. It's not a therapy session. It's an info session. If you got a friend or family member with OCD and you want to learn about it, we'd be happy to chat about it. And if you like what we were talking talking about tonight, check me out on our Get to Know OCD podcast, which you can subscribe to on the NOCD YouTube channel, and you can watch these videos over again if you'd like. Thank you, Mackenzie, for being here tonight. I really do appreciate it, and thank you all for being here again. Next week, we will have a couple other guests. We'll have Stacy and Radhika. They will be talking about OCD and substance use and answering your questions again, too, as always. So we'll see you again in a week, everybody. Talk to you later. And with that,